Folks, welcome to an all new episode of So Bad It's Good. This is your Wednesday episode. How the heck is everybody doing? Hi, my name is Ryan. You've made it halfway through the week, so good news. This is a jam packed episode. In today's episode, we have New York Times best-selling author Susan Morrison joining us to talk about her amazing biography about Lorne Michaels, the man who created Saturday Night Live. We are celebrating Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary. I burned through this book in like a week. I am a huge geek for SNL. I've talked about it on the show since the beginning of this show, 5 years. So I've got 45 more before I catch up to SNL. But this show has meant so much to me, just in terms of my dad showing it to me when I was a kid. And then I have a, kind of a habit of watching it every week. Even if I don't like it or not, I still watch it. It is wild. So I am totally caught up in the nostalgia of this. And I think this book is just excellent. Even if you're not a fan of Saturday Night Live, I think you should be a fan of somebody building an empire and somebody building an empire that launched so many stars, generation after generation, decade after decade. And I truly geeked out on this interview. It was wonderful. We got to do this in person last week. And huge thanks to Susan Morrison for this. Also want to let you know, we did a Real Housewives of Atlanta recap yesterday, but we also had the director and producer of the new 5-part docuseries that you can now stream on Max, A Body in the Snow, the Karen Reed trial. And all 5 episodes are out streaming. And everybody that I've recommended this to that have watched even just the first couple of episodes has been blown away. I got caught up re-watching it again today and I was like, no, you're too busy, but it really sucks you in. I'm recommending this highly, and then come back and listen to this interview afterwards. It truly has really fascinated me. We're dealing with another legal issue, though, before we get into Susan, but there is a timestamp if you want to skip right to that. And that is, have you guys heard about this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni thing? I don't know if this is, of course you've heard about it. This has been going on since December. The movie, It Ends With Us, has been out for a very long time now. And we have a trial date set for March of 2026 with Lively and Baldoni facing off. But we have somebody else that has entered the legal race today. Ryan Reynolds filed a motion to dismiss the defamation lawsuit against him. So he filed this motion because Justin Baldoni, there was a $400 million defamation lawsuit against him. Baldoni's suit alleges that Ryan Reynolds privately referred to him as a predator and influenced his talent agency, William Morris Endeavor, to sever ties. Now, Reynolds' legal team argues that expressing such an opinion, especially given the context of allegations against Baldoni, is protected under the First Amendment. Now, I'm going to try just to do a 30-minute summary here, which is not you guys got your stopwatches out? I'm going to try to do this. But you know what? Listen, I will say now, after reading so many court documents over these last 5 years due to Bravo Housewives and celebrity legal disturbances, you kind of grow to appreciate the language that these lawyers use. And I will say, in terms of just, if we're just to judge it by pure entertainment, if we were to divorce ourselves from the actual meaning and substance, I will say Brian Friedman, Baldoni and Wayfarer Studios, that lawyer, they pack a punch, man. It's almost like Colleen Hoover books where people seem to be addicted to these books. It's easily digestible. It really tells a sweeping story and you get caught up in the verbiage that they're using. Now, Ryan Reynolds, this isn't nearly as I don't want to use the word powerful. It makes some points. It's only 38 pages, and a lot of these are citing different things. So there's a lot of wasted pages with that. The other thing that I get curious about, and just from a purely black-hearted way, every time I read one of these legal documents, I want them to put a price tag at the top of the legal document saying it has cost this much so far in lawyer fees, on both sides. I want to know at this precise moment how much each side has spent on legal fees. I mean, we've got to be into the millions of dollars. And this is big money at stake. And a lot of people are saying that, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, they're going to have to settle. they're going to have to settle. This is not going to make it to that March 2026 court date. Now, Brian Friedman, he is kind of a little mum on that. He is saying, I'm not going to settle. Both parties seem to be full steam ahead. But there's a lot of different things going on in this case. Before we get to the Ryan Reynolds, though, I want to say in this last couple of weeks, there was a huge win for Blake Lively's team, is that there was a protective order granted. Now, a judge granted Lively's request for a protective order to prevent the public release of sensitive materials during the discovery process. The decision aims to protect personal and intimate information from being leaked, ensuring that certain discoveries remain for attorneys' eyes only. So this is a huge win, but it is kind of one of those things that makes you think, because listen, Baldoni and Wayfarer's team, Brian Friedman, put up a whole website. There was over 400 pages of documents. I mean, so much intimate information that I was like, what else is there? Are we just talking pictures? What are we talking? Is this, we should do an OnlyFans just for Blake Lively sensitive materials. What else is there? But this was their aim all along. They do not want to fight this case in public. When this case is fought in public, it seems to go against Lively and Reynolds. That's not me making up my mind. That's just actually seeing with my own eyes what the commotion of everybody and their arguments seem to be against Lively and Reynolds. But the thing is, no matter what we say, no matter how much we scream, they will potentially lose or have already lost in the court of public opinion. But will they lose when it comes to the legal system? Now, this, like I said, a huge win. If they are able to grant this protective order, that is a legal victory, one that Blake has needed for a long time, because after that website, it was looking really bleak. And so this is what they wanted all along, to fight this in private, not public. But there has been so much damage done on both sides. I mean, for both sides, obviously. But really, I mean, you do not go a day without seeing some of the most hateful comments about Lively and Reynolds. And I'm not saying that they don't potentially deserve that. It is just interesting to see the vitriol. It is, it's really, it's really intense. So that was a huge win. We also had the announcement this week that the legal battle is the focus of a new documentary titled He Said, She Said, Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. And it's going to be a 90-minute special examining the allegations and countersuits. And it's going to provide like an in-depth look into the case. Now, it's going to air in the UK on March 17th, and then in the US on Investigation Discovery, our buddies over at ID Discovery, on March 31st, which means it will also stream on Max. I predicted this when I first started talking about this in late December, and this is going to be a race. This is going to be one of the first ones that have been put out there. So you're going to see this probably really highly publicized. And then what I also think is you're going to see a stream of other streaming services doing this case, and it's going to get kind of better and better, and the quality is going to go up and up. I mean, just even thinking about the Karen Reed trial, you've seen so much on that, but I thought this ID Discovery docuseries was just a cut above. But this is it's a space race. Who can get to the moon first? And so it looks like, He Said, She Said is going to be one of the first big ones. But it's like back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember, there was a bunch of, a bunch of volcano movies. There was like Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones. And then there was a movie, I think what was it called, like Crater with Pierce Brosnan. Everybody was rushing to get their volcano movie out first. And that's what it feels like here. And once again, you have to divorce yourself from the seriousness of these topics. Now, this started because Blake Lively said that she was sexually harassed by Justin Baldoni. And not only harassed, he has done this to other people on the cast and crew of It Ends With Us, right? So this started with a really huge allegation. And then Baldoni's team answered with so much documentation, the back and forth and back and forth. So this is obviously a very sensitive, serious topic. But I do think sometimes the media around it, you're going to see this kind of, you've seen it already, just a flood of this. It's one of those things that kind of skyrocketed in popularity from the jump. And I'm just curious if it's ever going to burn itself out. Are we going to be able to sustain until March of 2026, a year from now? you know? Um, so yeah, that's all been going on. Now today, the Ryan Reynolds of it all. No, there was one other thing. So intimacy coordinators. There was an intimacy coordinator. There was a big argument in It Ends With Us, the whole legal battle. Um, where Blake Lively said she wanted an intimacy coordinator, but then in text messages to Baldoni, she said she was fine with like, oh, I don't really need to meet with the intimacy coordinator. We saw documentation, and I thought it was interesting because I saw an article today. What was this? It was this Page Six, or no, Variety actually, and it talked about Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow, legend, right? When I was growing up, she was a huge movie star. I mean, did amazingly good films. Royal Tenenbaums, Seven, Iron Man, Iron Man. Well, anyway, she's in a new film with Timothy Chalamet. Yeah, the Chalameister. And she says she has a lot of sex with Timothy Chalamet in this movie. And she was talking about intimacy coordinators because this is a job that didn't exist on movie sets when she was, in the age of filming. And she had some kind of interesting things to say about it. She says, there's now something called an intimacy coordinator, which I did not know existed. Paltrow said, noting that when Marty Supreme's intimacy coordinator, that's the name of the movie, Marty Supreme, asked her if she'd be comfortable with a particular move during the filming of an intimate scene, Paltrow said, I was like, girl, I'm from the era where you get naked, you get in bed, the camera's on. We said, I think we're good. You can step a little bit back. Paltrow added of not relying on an intimacy coordinator with Chalamet. Quote, I don't know how it is for kids who are starting out, but if someone is like, okay, and then he's going to put his hand here, I would feel, as an artist, very stifled by that. So I thought that was interesting. This is a day and age before intimacy coordinators saying it would almost infringe on her artistic sensibilities if somebody was telling her where to place the hand. She wants to be able to feel as an artist where to place the hand on Timothy Chalamet's little tiny boy butt. You know what I'm saying? And it just shows, how times have changed. Now, Anora, the movie that just won Best Film, and you can actually now stream on Hulu as of Monday, they didn't have an intimacy coordinator on that. But Mikey Madison, who won the Best Actress, she said, she trusted the director, she trusted the team, and she agreed to not have an intimacy coordinator. But this intimacy coordinator is one of the arguments and one of the things that Blake Lively used against Baldoni, and then Baldoni fired back at Blake Lively, saying that we did have an intimacy coordinator. But it's interesting that intimacy coordinators weren't even a thing 20 plus years ago. Yeah. Okay, back to this old Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds was not going to take this line down. I mean, but part of me reading this, I was like, oh my God, wait till Brian Friedman fires back Baldoni and Wayfarer's lawyer. Like, he is probably... You just get the sense that Brian Friedman is like, hell yeah. Like, he gets excited. He's like, woo, cha-ching. Let's get into this. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read the introduction, because the introduction, that's where you kind of get the meat of the argument, and it's like usually the most passionate part of a legal document. So it says, Blake Lively sued Jamie Heath, Justin Baldoni, It Ends With Us Movie LLC, Jennifer Abel, Melissa Nathan, Wayfarer Studios LLC, and Steve Sarowitz, who are the Wayfarer parties. Now, Steve Sarowitz is the billionaire that Ryan Reynolds thinks was set out to destroy him and Blake Lively, and he funded Wayfarer, and a lot of people suggest that he is funding Baldoni's legal team. It continues, after they collectively launched a retaliatory social manipulation campaign to destroy and bury her because she privately spoke up about sexual harassment and inappropriate conduct that she and others experienced on the set of the film It Ends With Us. So what does Ryan Reynolds have to do with that? Legally speaking, other than being a supportive spouse who has witnessed firsthand the emotional, reputational, and financial devastation Miss Lively has suffered? And then it says nothing, and they use a darker black font on the nothing. And I was like, do you charge Ryan Reynolds extra for the darker font? It says Mr. Reynolds is a defendant in this action for one reason and one reason only, because billionaire plaintiff Steve Sarowitz promised to spend up to $100 million to ruin Miss Lively and Mr. Reynolds. That sounds like a game show. It sounds like Deal or No Deal Island. We will potentially put $100 million in the prize pot. So the first amended complaint, which therefore in this complaint they refer to as the FAC, that Sarowitz and his co-plaintiffs filed seeks to fulfill that promise by polluting this court's docket with hundreds of paragraphs of clickbait designed for an audience other than this court, with virtually no bearing on cognizable legal claims. So they're saying it is just search and destroy, napalming the public narrative, and they've won, like, hands down, public discourse, right? So he's saying they are wasting the court's time. They are just trying to get the public on their side. The Wayfarer parties have described the FAC, the First Amended Complaint, as their most recent attempt to put all the evidence before the court and the public. That is a damning concession, given the lack of any actual evidence. We're using all darker black font on any actual evidence, supporting any legally cognizable claim against Mr. Reynolds. The Wayfarer party's so-called receipts include annotated excerpts, many with heavy redactions made by some identified person, of emails, text messages, videos, and photographs, such as large colored photographs comparing Mr. Reynolds' long hairstyle in a movie. They're obviously talking about Deadpool, where Ryan Reynolds played Nice Pool, which so many people speculate is a parody of Justin Baldoni. And they kind of admit in this that it is a parody. And we all know it's a parody. But is parody illegal? Anyways, they say a movie with Mr. Baldoni's long hairstyle at some point in his real life. But the FAC is a pleading, not a gossip rag, and these so-called receipts fail to establish the requisite elements of a single one of the many causes of action alleged against Mr. Reynolds. The Wayfarer parties attempt, but fail, in parentheses, to assert 6 causes of action as to Mr. Reynolds. Each fails to plead facts sufficient to establish a prima facie case as a matter of law. For example, the plaintiffs collectively assert a claim for defamation without pleading a single complete statement or identifying the time or place of such statement, nor can they because no such defamatory statement exists. Further, the entirety of plaintiff's defamation claims appears to be based on 2 times that Mr. Reynolds allegedly called Mr. Baldoni a predator. But the FAC alleges no plausible facts that suggest Mr. Reynolds did not believe this comment to be true. So they're saying he might have said this stuff, but he believed it to be true. So how would it be defamatory if he was believing his wife? I mean, listen, I'm no legal expert. Obviously, you know that. But there is this thing of like, is he throwing his wife further under this bus? He's like, sorry, Blake, can't help you. Got to get out of this one. Even if the FAC plausibly alleged that Mr. Reynolds called Mr. Baldoni a predator while believing the opposite, which it does not, the law establishes that calling someone a predator amounts to constitutionally protected opinion. And the FAC's thin-skinned outrage over a movie character, the satirical woke Nice Pool, does not even pretend to be tied to any actual legal claims. Instead, it falls into the FAC's general allegation of hurt feelings, which in reality is nothing more than a desperate effort to advance the same curated bully image that the Wayfarer parties created and disseminated in the retaliation campaign they launched against Miss Lively in August of 2024. So they are still holding to the original complaint that in August there was a coordinated attack on social media through all of these PR people against Blake Lively. So you're still claiming this to be true. All the other claims fail for similar reasons. The Wayfarer parties say that Mr. Reynolds extorted them, but fail to allege that he received any money or property. They claim he interfered with the contract without identifying what that contract is, what provisions were allegedly breached, or even which of them were parties to it. They assert $400 million in damages without explaining anything about who suffered that loss, in what proportion, as a result of which claims, or what proximately caused such losses. So in Blake's complaint, remember back in the day, she said she was launching her like hair care line and what was like a liquor brand. And they said they saw the dip in like Instagram comments and sales. And so I remember reading that at the time and going, wow, you can actually prove if you believe that there was this campaign launched against her, if you can prove that, and you can also show this dip in sales or non-existent sales, well, that does seem like damages, right? If you read that in December, I think that's what you would believe. So they're saying, what are the losses? Show us the losses. How can you prove that? How can you prove that on their side? It is, in essence, a burn book filled with grievances attempting to shame Mr. Reynolds for being the kind of man who is confident enough to listen to the woman in his life, to hold her in anguish and actually stand with her. The FAC is, in sum, a textbook retaliatory slap suit, and it should be dismissed with prejudice. So that is a strong opening statement. I think the thing that stands out the most is, you know, the hurt feelings comment. Was that this all, this all is, you're suing me because your feelings got hurt because I played nice pool, which I think is obviously, yeah, it's based on Justin Baldoni. But Hollywood has long done satirical content, right? I was trying to think of all the movies that you've seen people, actual figures satirized. Like I was thinking of that movie Tropic Thunder that Ben Stiller did. Now Tom Cruise is in that movie, and Tom Cruise plays a version of Harvey Weinstein. He's the producer that does like the dance scene, but he's also like screaming like expletives the whole time and pounding cans of Diet Coke, if I remember correctly. What was his name? Les Grossman in the movie. But that was always known to be Harvey Weinstein, right? You can satirize people. So that is not illegal. It might be tacky. Like nobody's arguing that Ryan Reynolds isn't tacky, but is it illegal? I mean, is this a strong argument saying like, listen, you can't sue me because your feelings got hurt? And if I were to believe these things that my wife told me to be true, how is that defamatory? And also defamation, like, are we even in that, a year, don't you have to, this could be completely wrong, but in defamation doesn't have to be within like a year window. And aren't we outside of that year window? So some of the highlights of this, as you get further into it, it says, Reynolds' attorneys argue that his statements are protected by the First Amendment, freedom of speech, which obviously safeguards individuals' right to express their opinions, even if those opinions are critical. For a defamation claim to succeed, the plaintiff must prove that the statement was false. So that is the burden of proof then, right? Reynolds' team contends that Baldoni has not demonstrated that. The absence of malice, the motion suggests that Reynolds' statements were not made with actual malice or reckless disregard for the truth, like we said, if he believes it. But the malice thing is a little iffy for me because couldn't you prove malice if he was angry enough to shoot a multi-million-dollar budget film that he was starring in and producing, and this is part of Marvel and Disney? Couldn't you make some argument that there was malice somewhere in there? Now, the context of allegations as well, which is obviously Reynolds' belief informed by Lively's allegations, public interest, no specific demonstrated, insufficient legal basis, and all in all, frivolous litigation, which you're going to keep hearing from the Lively Reynolds camp a lot, is that this is frivolous litigation. Now, the argument back to that is you started this litigation. You started this. The New York Times article started this. Now, the New York Times article also filed a motion to dismiss as well. It'll be interesting to hear the discourse the rest of this week from people of what people think of this. Is this a good argument? I mean, will Reynolds get out of this? And should Reynolds get out of this? Now, the other thing you have to think about is Blake Lively telling a lot of people in the complaint that Ryan Reynolds wrote the rooftop scene, right? The rooftop scene. But Ryan Reynolds had no signed contract with Wayfair or anything on It Ends With Us. So that you see in emails between Wayfair and Sony, because once Blake Lively had said this in an interview, they were like, whoa, Reynolds did what? Is there any contract in place? So he might have done things on this movie, but there were no contracts out there. So that's another thing that you can't prove necessarily. I mean, I guess you would have to throw Lively under the bus and just say, well, she was just talking out of her ass and she just thought she wrote the scene poorly, so she blamed it on her husband. But that's another thing was, yeah, you can't prove what he did on the film. I mean, you'll be able to, I would imagine, take statements, see if they're admissible, but there's no contract between any of those parties. So we're going to start seeing more and more action, but this had died down for a little bit, but this is kind of a big one with Reynolds jumping in the game. Now they've really gone back to public life in a lot of ways. She was out promoting the sequel to A Simple Favor at South by Southwest. Obviously, we did a story on Monday about some TikTok drama about at a hotel where Blake Lively felt she was being filmed and didn't like it. And who knows if that was true or not, but I wanted to tell you guys about that. And Reynolds has made appearances. Hugh Jackman's Radio City Music Show, Music City Hall show in January. And he's been popping up SNL 50. Obviously, that was a disastrous mess. But he is out there. He is out there. He's working. Blake is out there. And they are acting like nothing happened. Now, Colleen Hoover, the author of It Ends With Us, I saw today I don't know if this was a TikTok or an Instagram story. People were kind of not coming at her, but saying her behavior was weird because she posted this thing where she had an ice tray and she said, "I'm about to have the best Diet Pepsi ever. Because I filled this ice tray with Diet Pepsi and then I'm going to put it in the drink and put Diet Pepsi over it. And when it melts, it's going to be Diet Pepsi on Diet Pepsi." Now, the biggest horrible thing that I saw in that whole video was that she drinks Diet Pepsi. As a Diet Coke fan my entire life, and you can see how it's aged me in reverse, LOL. I was like, ooh, gross, you drink Diet Pepsi? That was like my big takeaway. But people were like, oh, is she drunk? Is she this? Is she that? And then the next video, she was talking about her Facebook group and her manager, or somebody that works for her, was offering certain products for like $10 on her website. And she was like, even if you hate me, that's a good deal. And people were like, oh shit, she's broke. And I don't think that is necessarily the case. And I know that is a narrative that would be really interesting to believe, but I will say she's got a lot of movies in the work right now. So we have It Ends With Us, which was a huge success even before any of these lawsuits, but we also have one of her popular thrillers, Verity, in the works. Now, this is a feature film adaptation with Amazon MGM Studios starring Anne Hathaway, Dakota Johnson, and Josh Hartnett. And you've seen paparazzi photos in the last month on New York City streets of them filming this. It's already in production. And then 2 more of Colleen Hoover's books, Reminders of Him and Regretting You, have been picked up as film adaptations as well. So these are all films that are moving along that she has been paid for. I was wondering if people were going to shy away from making Colleen Hoover projects, but that does not seem to be the case. So in a sense, it seems like she is moving right along. Now, the Anne Hathaway one especially seems interesting because Michael Showalter is directing that. And I love Michael Showalter. He used to be in the sketch comedy group The State, but it turns out this dude is a damn fine director. I've liked a lot of his films now over the years. He did Spoiler Alert. I don't know if you saw that. You can see that on Peacock. In 2021, he did The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which had amazing performances from Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield. The Big Sick with, who is in that? Kumail Nanjiani. He's amazing. He did The Idea of You with Anne Hathaway, so they're working together again. And I know this should be about Lively Baldoni, but I love Michael Showalter, so I just had to mention that as a movie geek. So she's doing okay. I would imagine she hates this. I would imagine she hates opening up social media and just seeing this all over the place. But that is a brief update. I will try not to do any 4-hour podcasts, but I wanted to give a brief. We managed to get this in under 30 minutes. We'll keep you updated. If anything happens, if anything breaks, we'll do another big episode. But I'm just really curious Friedman's response to this, because I think we will see that today or the next day. And I think you're just going to feel some really big excitement on his end. I think he is going to be hitting TMZ. I think he's going to be hitting a lot of these things where you see, this guy, I don't know. It's really interesting. Somebody should do a documentary on Brian Friedman. Anyways, that's it, folks. Now let's get to something I'm really proud of. I want you to stay around for this interview. Even if SNL isn't your thing, I think this is just Lorne Michaels is just kind of an amazing dude to study. And this book takes you through a week at SNL. Each day, what happens each day through Lorne Michaels' eyes. Susan had first person access with Lorne Michaels and got to be there every day for 1 week at SNL. And in between each of those days, you go back into Lorne's life from childhood up until now. And it just, I wish it could have kept going. She says there were like 600 pages cut from this book. And I'm like, give me those 600 pages now. This is what I truly geek out on, folks. And yeah, I didn't get to ask her if she watches any reality TV because it was just so exciting talking about this. And I think we all have that special spot in our heart or some memory of Saturday Night Live that sticks with us, or some actor or actress that came from there, or you watched because they hosted, or a musical artist or band performed, and you're like, I gotta watch them. It has been appointment television for 50 years, and there's not a lot of institutions that can say that. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here she is, the author of Lorne, Susan Morrison.